Hey guys, Sean from Top 5 Fit here. Wanted to start a new series called Restore and Rebuild. As an aging male, thousands of years old, I try to throw in restorative, however you say that, basically just trying to come up with ways to heal yourself a little bit faster. Heavy squatting, tumbling, handstands, yoga, you name it, even if you're sitting at a desk, there are areas at the body that ultimately take a lot of damage. They get worn down, they degenerate, they can cause pain. And one of the first things a lot of people tend to do is they move towards some type of pharmaceutical, some type of painkiller, not necessarily knowing that there are ways to improve these areas, kind of speed up the healing process in these areas. And that's kind of what we want to do with this series moving forward. I'd like to start with a pretty common area that a lot of people experience discomfort in, the low back. Power lifters, again, people who work at their desks all day long, or just individuals that don't necessarily have the best posture. A lot of times this can create pinches, irritation, nerve disruption in the low back, and that's something that you tend to carry throughout your day, and it can really disrupt all of your activities, anything that you're trying to engage in. That low back pain is there. This is something where if you have the means, if you have the equipment, or even if you don't, you can kind of rig up your own. But this is kind of what we like to do here as far as showing people how they can alleviate low back pain without necessarily popping a pill right away. Please keep in mind too, just for legality's sake, I am not trying to cure or prevent any kind of disease. FDA, don't come after me or anything like that. These are just some techniques that I like to use with my own clientele in here. First thing we're going to go after are the number 7 bands. These are the biggest bands as far as power bands, resistance bands that are out there. Each one of these bands is about 200 pounds of resistance. You can squat with them. We've had them on the running station here for resisted running drills. Today we're going to go into some of that restore and rebuild activities that we were just talking about. What you're going to want is one number 7 band by itself, and then 2 that have been slip knotted together. So we want to find a nice high anchor point or a place where you can actually get the bands up and above you. We're not looking to necessarily suspend the body weight, but we do want a little bit of that upward pull so we can create positioning in the low back that's ultimately going to help return our posture to where it needs to be and alleviate some of that discomfort that you might be feeling. The band that's got the slip knot in it, we're going to go ahead and throw that over top. And it really doesn't matter what side the knot is on, just as long as you've got both of those bands, both sides, up and over top of the bar. The bottom, what we'll have are 2 loops, the ends, that I'm going to put together. The number 7 band that's by itself, we're going to make another slip knot through both of those bands. And I like to try to flatten these out just a little bit, just to make sure that the knot is smooth. Sometimes if you go too fast and there's extra turns in the band, those can create friction points that ultimately can cut your bands, and I like to get as much life out of these as I possibly can. So once you've got the slip knot in place, just kind of feed the band through itself, the free number 7. Again, I like to flip things over and make sure that those knots are as smooth as possible, until eventually you've got an apparatus that kind of looks like this. That bottom number 7 band, we're going to go ahead and slip up and over our heads and set it so that it's right about belt line, waistline, belt line. So right away, I'll step back, adjust the band just a little bit, and this is the position that you want to be in, okay? To start off with, go ahead and have a seat on the floor, and you'll notice as soon as I lay down, the pressure from the band is automatically going to put that curve right back into my low back. When you're standing, your spine actually has a curve in the low back, your lumbar curve, which is supposed to be there. But a lot of times, because of sitting too much, even because of general exercising, you can actually reverse that curve. And the way your vertebrae are ultimately designed, that curve is supposed to be there. So when it starts to straighten out and you lose that curve, you start putting pressure on nerves. you start putting pressure on structures that shouldn't be receiving pressure, and that's when you can, ultimately start feeling pain and discomfort and you're not sure where to go. So right away, without doing anything, this is helping to reinforce the curve that's supposed to be in your low back. What I like to do ultimately is start kind of a shoulder walk back. You can push with the feet as well, and that's just to increase the pressure that the band is actually placing across the low back. And we'll hang out here for anywhere from 10 seconds, 30 seconds. I've watched entire movies in this position before, all depending upon what your activity level is like and how much pain you're in and what you can tolerate. In the beginning, just for a general guideline, I wouldn't stay in this position for more than about 20 to 30 seconds. And then obviously when you're ready to sit up, just kind of walk your hands up the band and it can help you stand back up. That's kind of a very general, just let's start some restructuring and some rebuilding as far as the low back is concerned. Getting into position, letting it hold that curve and that arch, and then getting out of the position. Just that reinforcement throughout the day to kind of counteract what happens when we're spending time like this. So ideally, we're trying to improve posture. We're trying to put the curve in the low back, a couple of seconds here, and then we back out of it. Some drills that we can get into after we've warmed up and we're ready to take on the next challenge per se. Once you're in this position, we can kind of move the legs around just a little bit. Go ahead and straighten one out. And if we take the same side arm and actually cross over to the head, that's going to actually give us a little bit of pull in the QL and down in the low back. It's not a complete crossover. I'm not trying to roll. I'm just trying to increase the distance between the musculature in the low back and the glute to add a little extra pull. You can do the same thing on the opposite side. Straighten that leg out and just reach across just to add a little bit of tug in the low back and then back off of it. We can also get into the concept of distraction or traction. So ultimately, you've seen vertebrae before and how ultimately they connect and how they articulate. A lot of times when degeneration happens, what you'll see is the space that's supposed to be between vertebrae starts to close. Distraction, that helps open the space back up. We're not trying to pull the vertebrae apart, but what we are trying to do is relieve some of the pressure that can be created by degeneration, breakdown, and poor posture. Taking your hands, placing them right on top of the thighs, gentle pressure pushing away from your head and torso will allow the vertebrae to relax, open up a little bit, and relieve pressure on the nerves. And again, that's a 10 to 20 second hold, and then back off. 10 to 20 second hold, push, and back off. This is a season to taste kind of drill. You obviously want to make sure you're working well within your own pain tolerances. We're not trying to create spasming. We're not trying to push with all of our might. This is just gentle pressure, just enough to where you can feel yourself actually creating space within the vertebrae. And then you back off. To augment or increase the pressure just a little bit, we can actually take the legs now, pick one up at a time, same thing, press, and now we can get distraction just on the right side like I'm doing here, and then back off. It helps isolate one side over the other. Cross the leg, push, until eventually, of course, we can tolerate both legs up, hands, and press. This is obviously going to feel a little bit more intense than when your feet are on the ground, because now the band is actually picking you up by your waistline. And then you can place the feet back down, re-grab the band, walk yourself back up. Thanks for watching. Again, the purpose of this video is to give individuals a way to work on general aches and pains that may come about just through general workday or conditioning. People who work at desks, high impact base sports, baseball, basketball, football, anywhere where there's jumping, bounding, impact taken to where the low back is actually getting compressed, getting pressure placed on it. These are drills that can kind of help loosen those things up and keep you in your game of training. If you're finding the information helpful, go ahead and give us a like. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. Any questions, feel free to throw them in the comment box and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. Thanks.